My daughter screamed, "You're not even my real parent." I handed her a letter I never meant to show. By the next morning, her entire world had changed forever. Justice comes in many forms, but the truth is always the most powerful weapon. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. I stared at Madison across the kitchen island, my hands shaking as I gripped the yellowed envelope I'd kept hidden for 23 years. Her eyes, bright with anger just moments ago, now widened with confusion and the first flickers of fear. "What's that?" she asked, her voice suddenly small. "The truth," I said quietly. "You wanted to know who your real parent is. Well, here's your answer." Her hand reached for the envelope, then hesitated. The fury that had fueled her outburst seemed to evaporate, replaced by uncertainty. I didn't blame her. At 25, Madison had never questioned her place in the world until 3 weeks ago, when her cousin Brittany had made that careless remark at the family reunion, "You don't look anything like your dad." Brittany had said after too many glasses of wine, "I always thought you were adopted or something." A thoughtless comment, dropped like a grenade into Madison's life. And now, after weeks of growing tension and tonight's explosive argument, we were here. The moment I'd dreaded since I married her mother and became Madison's father when she was just 2 years old. "You've always thrown it in my face that I'm not your biological father," I said. My voice steadied despite the hurricane of emotions inside me. "But you have no idea what being a real parent means." Madison's lips trembled. "If you're trying to scare me, I've paid for your dance lessons, your private school, your college tuition," I continued. "I was at every recital, every parent-teacher conference, every doctor's appointment. I held your hand through your first heartbreak. I taught you to drive. I've been your father in every way that matters for 23 years. I slid the envelope across the granite countertop, the same countertop I'd installed myself 5 years ago when we renovated the kitchen in the house I'd paid for. The house where I'd raised Madison as my own, never once letting her feel like she was anything less than my daughter. "But if biology is all that matters to you," I said, "then go ahead, open it." Madison stared at the envelope as if it might bite her. In the other room, I could hear the TV where her fiancé Jake was watching the game, oblivious to the life-altering confrontation happening just 30 feet away. Her mother, Sandra, wouldn't be home for another 2 hours. It was just Madison and me, standing on opposite sides of a divide that had been growing for years but had suddenly become a chasm. "I didn't mean what I said," she whispered. "I was just angry about the wedding budget." "You meant it," I replied, the hurt evident in my voice, despite my efforts to hide it. "This isn't the first time you've thrown it in my face that we don't share DNA. And it's not just about money, Madison, it's about respect." Her fingers touched the envelope, then drew back. "I don't want to know." "Yes, you do," I said. "Because you've been searching for something to hold over me your entire life. Some reason why I'm not worthy of your respect. Well, here it is. The truth about your biological father. The man you seem to think would have been a better parent than me." I watched her face carefully. This was the moment that would define our relationship going forward. Either she would open that envelope and face the truth, or she would back down and we would continue as we had been with her, using my non-biological status as a weapon whenever she wanted something I wasn't willing to give. "What does it say?" she asked. "Open it and find out." With trembling fingers, Madison picked up the envelope. 23 years of secrets were about to come to light, and nothing in our family would ever be the same again. Looking at Madison standing there in her expensive yoga clothes, clutching that envelope, it was hard to remember the little girl with pigtails who used to run to me when I came home from work. The child who'd cried when I'd missed her kindergarten graduation because my flight was delayed. The teenager who'd begged me to teach her to drive in my new Ford F-150 instead of Sandra's sedan because trucks are cooler. Dad. I'd met Sandra when Madison was just 18 months old. Sandra was a young widow, she told me, with a baby daughter and not much else. I fell for both of them, the beautiful, struggling young mother, and her chubby-cheeked little girl who called me Dada the third time we met. Sandra and I were married 6 months later. I adopted Madison legally when she turned 2, giving her my last name to James Thomas, proud father of Madison Thomas. It was the happiest day of my life when the adoption was finalized. I'd never wanted anything as much as I wanted to be that little girl's father. I worked hard to provide for my new family. Construction management wasn't glamorous, but it paid well, and I moved up quickly. We bought our first house when Madison was 4, a small 3-bedroom in a good school district. I made sure Madison had everything she needed and most of what she wanted. Dance lessons at $75 per week, starting when she was 5. Private school at $15,000 a year when the public middle school had problems with gangs. Braces at 13. $6,500 out of pocket because our insurance only covered part of the orthodontic work. A car for her 16th birthday, not a new one, but a safe, reliable Honda that cost me $12,000. Then college, 4 years at UCLA, nearly $35,000 per year with housing. I'd taken out a second mortgage to make it happen, but I'd never regretted it. Madison had graduated with honors and no student debt, something few of her friends could claim. Through all of it, Sandra worked part-time as a dental hygienist, bringing in enough to cover groceries and utilities. But the bulk of our family's financial security rested on my shoulders. I never complained. They were my family, and providing for them was my responsibility and my privilege. The problem started when Madison was in high school. Suddenly, my rules were too strict. My expectations were too high. My discipline was too harsh. Sandra usually sided with Madison, creating a dynamic that only got worse as Madison got older. "You're not my real dad," became Madison's go-to phrase whenever she didn't get her way. The first time she said it, I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. By the 5th time, it had become a familiar pain. No less intense but at least expected. Sandra never corrected her, never reminded Madison of the middle-of-the-night fevers I'd soothed, the nightmares I'd chased away, the countless hours I'd spent helping with science projects and math homework. In Sandra's eyes, keeping the peace was more important than defending my place in our family, and now here we were, with Madison demanding that I increase our contribution to her wedding from the $25,000 we'd already promised to $40,000 because she'd found the perfect venue that cost more than our original budget. "Dad, it's just $15,000 more," she'd said earlier that evening, as if $15,000 was pocket change. "Jake's parents are already paying for the rehearsal dinner and the honeymoon." "Madison, we agreed on a budget," I'd replied. "Your mother and I are already stretched thin with the house payment and helping your brother with his college tuition. Michael, our son biologically mine and Sandra's was a sophomore at State. You're just being difficult." Madison had snapped. "If I was really your daughter, you'd find a way to make it happen." And there it was again, the weapon she always reached for when she wasn't getting her way. "Madison, I've been your father since you were 2 years old," I'd said quietly. "I've paid for everything you've ever needed and most of what you've wanted. I think I've proven my commitment to you over the past 23 years, but you're not my real father," she'd yelled, "and you've never let me forget it." That's when something inside me had broken. Years of patience, understanding, and unconditional love crashed against the rocks of her ingratitude and cruelty. "You want to know about your real father?" I'd asked. "Fine. Wait here." I'd gone to my home office and unlocked the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet, where I kept important documents, our wills, insurance policies, property deeds, and buried beneath them all, a sealed envelope I'd sworn to Sandra I would never open now. Watching Madison hold that envelope, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Regret that we'd reached this point, anger at her manipulative behavior, sadness that she could so easily dismiss 2 decades of fatherhood, and fear of what would happen when she learned the truth. "Maybe we should wait for Mom to get home," Madison said, her voice uncertain. "Your mother doesn't want you to open that," I replied. "She never has. That's why I've kept it hidden all these years." Madison's brow furrowed. "What do you mean? Did she know my biological father?" I laughed without humor. "Oh yes, she knew him very well." "Dad, you're scaring me." "I'm not trying to scare you, Madison. I'm trying to give you what you've been asking for, the truth about your biological father." Madison looked down at the envelope, then back at me. "If I open this, things will change, won't they?" "They already have," I said softly. "The moment you decided that the man who raised you, who loved you, who sacrificed for you, wasn't your real parent because we don't share DNA." Her lower lip trembled. For a moment, I saw my little girl again, not the entitled young woman she'd become. I almost took the envelope back then, almost protected her from the truth, as I'd been doing her entire life. But some lessons can only be learned the hard way. "Open it," I said. Madison slid her finger under the flap and tore the envelope open. The kitchen was silent except for the soft sound of paper as Madison unfolded the letter inside the envelope. Her eyes moved across the first few lines, then widened. She looked up at me, then back down at the letter. As she continued reading, the color drained from her face. "This can't be right," she whispered. "It's right," I confirmed. Every word. The letter was dated June 12, 1998, about 3 months before I met Sandra. It was from the county correctional facility, and signed by a man named Robert Callahan. Dear Sandra, I received your letter informing me of your pregnancy. While I cannot deny the possibility that the child is mine, I want to be clear that I have no interest in being a father. As you know, I will be incarcerated for the next 7 to 10 years, and I have no desire to form a relationship with this child upon my release. I hereby relinquish all parental rights and responsibilities. I will not seek visitation or custody at any point. I would prefer that the child never knows of my existence. Do not contact me again. Regarding this matter, Robert Callahan Madison read the letter 3 times, her hands shaking more violently with each reading. Mom told me my biological father was a soldier who died overseas before I was born, she said, her voice barely audible. Your mother thought that story would be easier for you to accept than the truth. I replied. Which is what? That my biological father is a criminal who wanted nothing to do with me. Madison's voice cracked. Robert Callahan was sentenced to 10 years for armed robbery, I said quietly. He was already in prison when you were born. He served his full sentence and was released when you were about 11. As far as I know, he's never tried to contact you or your mother. Madison sank onto one of the kitchen stools, the letter clutched in her hand. Why didn't you tell me? Because your mother begged me not to, I said. She wanted to protect you from the knowledge that your biological father was a convicted felon who rejected you before you were even born. So you lied to me my entire life. Madison's shock was turning to anger. But it was a different kind of anger, now less entitled. More wounded. We didn't tell you the whole truth, I acknowledged, but Sandra was the one who created the story about the soldier. I never felt comfortable with that lie, but I went along with it because I thought it was better for you to believe your biological father was a hero than a criminal. When did you find out about Robert? I sat down across from her. About 2 weeks before our wedding. Sandra finally told me the truth because she was afraid Robert might somehow find out about you and try to make contact after he was released. She wanted me to adopt you legally to protect you from him. Madison stared at me. So you knew. When you married Mom, when you adopted me, you knew my biological father was in prison for armed robbery. Yes, I said simply. And you still wanted to be my dad. Of course I did. You were an innocent child, Madison. Robert's choices had nothing to do with you. She looked back down at the letter, then at me again. Does Michael know about my real father? No. Your mother and I agreed that was your story to tell, if and when you were ready. Madison was quiet for a long moment. I don't understand. If you've had this letter all along, why give it to me now? I leaned forward, resting my forearms on the countertop. Because you keep throwing it in my face that I'm not your real father. I thought it was time you knew what your real father thought about being your parent. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. That's cruel. Yes, it is, I agreed. Almost as cruel as telling the man who raised you, who loved you unconditionally for 23 years, that he's not your real parent because he wouldn't give you an extra $15,000 for a wedding venue. Tears filled Madison's eyes. I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did, I said firmly. You've been using my non-biological status as a weapon against me since you were 15. Every time you don't get your way, I'm suddenly not your real father. Do you have any idea how much that hurts? A tear slid down her cheek. I'm sorry. Are you? Because this isn't the first time we've had this conversation. Madison, you apologize, and then the next time you want something I'm not willing to give, you throw it in my face again that we don't share DNA. I was just angry, she said weakly. You're always just angry when you say it, I replied. But here's what you don't understand. Being a parent isn't about biology. It's about showing up. It's about sacrifice. It's about putting someone else's needs ahead of your own. Day after day, year after year. I pointed to the letter in her hand. That man, your biological father, has never spent a single dollar on your upbringing. He's never sat up with you when you were sick. He's never cheered at your dance recitals or helped you with your homework or taught you to drive. He rejected you before you were even born. Madison was crying openly now, tears streaming down her face. I've been there for every moment of your life since you were 2 years old, I continued. I've supported you financially, emotionally, in every way possible. I've loved you as my own because you are my own. Biology doesn't make a parent, Madison. Love does. Commitment does. Sacrifice does. I know, she whispered. I've always known that. Then why do you keep throwing it in my face that I'm not your biological father? She stared down at the countertop, unable to meet my eyes. Because it works, she admitted finally, her voice small. Because I know it hurts you, and when I say it, you usually give in to whatever I want. Her honesty stunned me into silence. I'd suspected this was true, but hearing her admit it so bluntly was still a shock. That's manipulation, Madison, I said finally, and it stops now. She nodded, still not looking at me. Are you going to tell Mom that you showed me this? She held up the letter. Yes, I said. I'm done keeping secrets in this family. Madison finally raised her eyes to meet mine. What about the wedding? Are you still going to help pay for it? I stood up. Your mother and I agreed to contribute $25,000 to your wedding. That offer still stands. But not a penny more. And there will be conditions. What kind of conditions? She asked warily. If you ever throw it in my face again that I'm not your real father, I will withdraw every cent of financial support, not just for the wedding, but for everything. The health insurance you're still on under my plan, the car insurance I still pay for, the phone bill that's still part of our family plan, all of it. You wouldn't do that, Madison said, but she didn't sound certain. Try me, I replied. I've spent 23 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars being your father. I've earned that title. And I'm done letting you use it as a weapon against me. I turned to leave the kitchen, then paused. You can keep the letter. Show it to Jake if you want. Show it to your brother. Hell, show it to the whole family. I'm done pretending that your biological father was some kind of hero when the reality is that he wanted nothing to do with you. While I've devoted my life to being the best father I could be, I walked out, leaving Madison sitting at the counter with the letter that had changed everything. When Sandra got home that night, she found Madison still sitting in the kitchen, the letter on the counter in front of her. I was in my office, pretending to work but actually waiting for the explosion I knew was coming. It didn't take long. Sandra's footsteps echoed down the hallway, growing faster and louder, until she burst through my office door without knocking. How could you? She demanded, her face flushed with anger. We agreed never to tell her about Robert. I set down my pen and looked up at my wife of 23 years. Things change, Sandra. Madison needed to know the truth. That wasn't your decision to make, she shouted. She's my daughter. You our daughter, I corrected her. Or have you forgotten that I legally adopted her? That I've been her father in every way that matters since she was 2 years old. Sandra's hands clenched into fists at her sides. You had no right to show her that letter. I had every right, I said calmly. Madison has been throwing it in my face for years that I'm not her real father. She did it again tonight, over the wedding budget. I decided it was time she knew exactly what her real father thought about being her parent. Sandra's eyes widened. This is about money. You traumatized our daughter because you didn't want to pay for her wedding. This is not about money, I said, my voice hardening. This is about respect. Madison has been manipulating me for years using the fact that we're not biologically related, and you've let her do it. That's not true, Sandra protested, but her eyes slid away from mine. It is true, and you know it, I insisted. Every time she says I'm not her real father, you stay silent. You don't remind her of all I've done for her. You don't stand up for me or for our family. You let her use it as a weapon against me. And then you privately pressure me to give in to whatever she wants. Sandra sank into the chair across from my desk. I just wanted to keep the peace. No, you wanted to avoid the hard conversations. You wanted to protect Madison from the truth about Robert, even if it meant letting her disrespect me. She's always been sensitive about not knowing her biological father, Sandra said weakly. And whose fault is that? I asked. You're the one who created the lie about him being a dead soldier. You're the one who built him up as some kind of hero in her mind, making it impossible for me to ever measure up. Sandra flinched. That's not fair, James. None of this is fair, I replied. It's not fair that I've spent 23 years being Madison's father only to have her throw it in my face whenever she wants something. It's not fair that you've allowed it to happen. And it's certainly not fair that Madison has been manipulating both of us using a lie you created. What do you want me to do? Sandra asked, her voice small. I want you to start acting like we're partners, I said firmly. I want you to support me when I set boundaries with our children. I want you to remind Madison that being a father is about more than DNA. Sandra was quiet for a long moment. And if I don't? I hadn't expected that response. I'd expected her to apologize, to promise to do better. The fact that she was essentially asking what would happen if she continued to undermine me was telling. Then we have bigger problems than Madison's wedding budget, I said finally. Sandra's gaze sharpened. Are you threatening to leave me, James? I'm saying that I deserve a wife who respects me and supports me as a father, even when it's difficult, even when it means having uncomfortable conversations with our children. She's going to hate me, Sandra whispered. When she finds out I lied about Robert all these years. She's upset, I acknowledged. But she's an adult. She processed this and moved forward. The question is whether she moved forward with a healthier understanding of what it means to be a family, or whether she continued to use manipulation to get what she wants. And that depends on me, Sandra said, understanding dawning on her face. It depends on both of us, I corrected her. We need to present a united front. We need to make it clear to Madison that her behavior has been unacceptable, and that it stops now. Sandra stood up. I need to talk to her. We need to talk to her, I said, also standing. Together, we found Madison in the living room with Jake. Her eyes were red from crying, and Jake looked confused and concerned. The letter was clutched in Madison's hand. Mom, Madison said when she saw us. Did you know about this? Did you know my real father was in prison? Sandra glanced at me, then back at our daughter. Yes, she admitted. I've always known. So you lied to me, Madison accused. All those stories about my father being a brave soldier who died before I was born, they were all lies. I was trying to protect you, Sandra said. By lying to me my entire life. Madison's voice rose. By letting me believe my biological father was some kind of hero instead of a criminal who wanted nothing to do with me. Madison, Jake said quietly, putting his hand on her arm. Maybe you should calm down and listen to what your parents have to say. Madison shook off his hand. They're not both my parents. Only Mom is my real parent. And there it was again. Even after reading the letter, even after our conversation in the kitchen, she was still using it as a weapon. I stepped forward. That's enough, Madison. Something in my tone made everyone in the room go still. For 23 years, I have been your father, I said, my voice steady despite the anger and hurt churning inside me. I've loved you, supported you, and provided for you in every way possible. I've been there for every milestone, every triumph, and every heartbreak. I chose to be your father when your biological father chose to walk away. I pointed to the letter in her hand. That man Robert Callahan, he's your biological father, but he is not, and has never been, your real parent. I am, because being a real parent means showing up. It means sacrificing. It means putting your child's needs ahead of your own. Madison stared at me, tears filling her eyes again. I'm done letting you use my non-biological status as a weapon against me, I continued. It stops now. Either you accept me as your father, your real father, or you forfeit the privileges that come with being my daughter. What privileges? Madison asked, her voice barely audible. Financial support, I said bluntly. The $25,000 for your wedding, the health insurance, the car insurance, the phone bill, all of it. You can't do that, she protested. I can. I contradicted her. You're 25 years old, Madison. An adult. I have no legal obligation to support you anymore. I do it because you're my daughter and I love you. But love has to go both ways. Respect has to go both ways. Sandra stepped forward. James is right, Madison. He's been your father in every way that matters since you were 2 years old. I should have done a better job of making that clear to you. Madison looked from me to her mother, and back again. So what? I either say what you want to hear, or you cut me off financially. No, I said firmly. You either recognize and respect the reality of our relationship, that I am your father in every way that matters, or you lose the benefits of that relationship. It's not about saying what I want to hear. It's about genuine respect and appreciation for the role I've played in your life. Jake stood up. Mr. Thomas, Mrs. Thomas, I think Madison and I need some time to talk privately about this. I nodded. That's a good idea. Take all the time you need. As Jake led Madison toward the door, I added, one more thing. They both turned back. This isn't just about money, Madison. This is about our entire relationship going forward. Think carefully about what kind of relationship you want to have with me with us for the rest of your life. After they left, Sandra turned to me. Do you think she'd come around? I don't know, I admitted. But I do know that I can't keep pretending everything is okay when it's not. Something had to change. Sandra took my hand. I'm sorry, James, for not standing up for you all these years, for letting Madison disrespect you. I appreciate that, I said, but what matters now is what happens next. Are we going to present a united front on this? Sandra squeezed my hand. Yes, it's long overdue. I didn't know if our ultimatum would work. I didn't know if Madison would choose to respect me as her father or if her sense of entitlement was too deeply ingrained. But for the first time in years, I felt like I was standing up for myself, and Sandra was standing with me. The next morning, I woke up early and went to my home office. I had decisions to make, preparations to put in place in case Madison decided to call my bluff. Because I wasn't bluffing. If she continued to disrespect me, to throw it in my face that I wasn't her real father, I would follow through on every consequence I'd outlined. First, the wedding contribution. I'd already set aside $25,000 in a separate account for Madison's wedding. I logged into my online banking and verified the funds were still there, ready to be transferred to the wedding vendors when the time came, or to be repurposed if Madison chose to reject me as her father. Next, the health insurance. Madison was still on my company's health plan as a dependent. I could remove her with a single phone call to HR. I made a note of the number but didn't call yet. This was a consequence that would take effect only if Madison continued her disrespectful behavior. Car insurance was next. Madison's Honda, the one I'd bought her for her 16th birthday and replaced with a newer model when she graduated college, was insured under our family policy. Removing her would be simple but would increase her monthly expenses significantly. The phone bill was the easiest. One call to our provider, and Madison's line would be removed from our family plan. She'd have to get her own service, at her own expense. I made a list of all these items, with estimated costs for Madison if she had to take them over herself. Health insurance, approximately $400 month. Insurance, approximately $200 month. Phone bill, approximately $80 month. Wedding contribution, $25,000. One-time total monthly increase in expenses for Madison, approximately $680. Total one-time loss, $25,000. It was substantial. Madison made decent money as a marketing coordinator, but taking on these additional expenses would definitely impact her lifestyle, and losing the wedding contribution would either force her to scale back her plans significantly or go into debt to finance the celebration she wanted. But this wasn't about punishing Madison. It was about establishing clear boundaries and consequences for behavior that had been allowed to continue for far too long. It was about reclaiming my dignity as her father and demanding the respect I'd earned through decades of love and sacrifice. I heard Sandra's footsteps in the hallway. Then she appeared in the doorway of my office. "What are you doing up so early?" she asked, tightening the belt of her robe. "Planning," I replied, gesturing to the notepad in front of me. Sandra came around the desk and looked over my shoulder at the list. "You're really serious about this, aren't you?" "Completely serious," I confirmed. "I've spent too many years letting Madison use my non-biological status against me. It stops now." Sandra sighed and sat down in the chair across from me. "I keep thinking about that letter. About Robert. What about him? Did you ever try to find him?" After he was released from prison, I hesitated, then decided it was time for complete honesty between us. Yes. About 12 years ago, when Madison was 13 and starting to push boundaries, I thought it might be helpful to know where he was, in case she ever decided to look for him herself. Sandra's eyes widened. "You never told me that. Did you find him?" "Yes," I admitted. "He was living in Portland, working as a mechanic. He'd remarried and had 2 other children." "Did you contact him?" "No," I said. "I just wanted to know where he was, in case Madison ever asked. I wanted to be prepared." Sandra was quiet for a moment. "Do you think we should tell her that Robert has other children, that she has half-siblings out there somewhere?" I considered this. "I think we've had enough truth bombs for one weekend, don't you? Let's see how Madison processes the information she already has before we add more complications." Sandra nodded. "You're right. One crisis at a time." My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Jake. "Can we come over this afternoon to talk? Madison didn't sleep last night. She's been thinking about everything." I showed the message to Sandra. "What do you think?" "I think it's a good sign that she wants to talk," Sandra replied. "And it's a good sign that Jake is involved. He's always been a steadying influence." I texted back. "Yes. How about 2 p.m.? Jake's response came immediately. "Perfect. Thank you." Sandra and I spent the morning going about our usual Saturday routines. But there was tension in the air. Anticipation of the conversation to come. At 1:30, I made a pot of coffee. At 1:55, the doorbell rang. Madison and Jake stood on the porch. Madison looked pale and tired, with dark circles under her eyes. Jake had his arm around her waist, supportive but not overbearing. "Come in," I said, stepping back to let them enter. We settled in the living room. Madison and Jake on the sofa, Sandra and I in the armchairs opposite them. For a moment, no one spoke. Finally, Madison took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about what you said, about you being my real father because you've been there for me my whole life." I nodded but didn't interrupt, and I realized you're right. she continued. A real parent is someone who shows up, who sacrifices, who loves unconditionally. That's what you've done for me, Dad. For 23 years, she reached into her purse and pulled out the letter from Robert Callahan. This man, my biological father, he didn't want me. He rejected me before I was even born. But you, ... Her voice broke. You chose me. You chose to be my father when you didn't have to. Tears filled my eyes. I've never regretted that choice, Madison. Not for a single day. I've been horrible to you, she admitted, using the fact that we're not biologically related as a weapon whenever I didn't get my way. I'm so ashamed of that now. Why did you do it? I asked gently. Madison glanced at Sandra, then back at me. Because it worked, she said, echoing her admission from the night before. Because I knew it hurt you. And when you were hurt, you'd usually give in to what I wanted. It was manipulative and cruel, and I'm so sorry. Jake took her hand, squeezing it supportively. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, Madison continued. I know I've done a lot of damage to our relationship, but I want you to know that I understand now. I understand what it means to be a real parent, and I understand that you've always been my real father. The words I'd waited years to hear, not grudgingly given, not said to manipulate me, but offered with genuine understanding and remorse. Thank you for saying that, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Madison wiped tears from her cheeks. About the wedding, ... We talked it over last night. And we've decided to scale back our plans to fit within the budget you and Mom already promised. The venue I wanted was beautiful, but it's not worth damaging our relationship over $15,000. We found another venue that's actually perfect, Jake added. It's within the original budget, and they had a cancellation for October. So we can still have a fall wedding like Madison wanted. That sounds like a sensible solution, Sandra said, glancing at me. I nodded. I think so too. Madison took a deep breath. There's something else. I want to pay for my own phone plan and car insurance from now on. I'm 25 years old with a good job. I shouldn't still be financially dependent on you for those things. I hadn't expected this, Madison. That wasn't part of the ultimatum. Those were just examples of the financial support I provide. I know, she said, but I think it's time I took more responsibility for myself. You've been carrying me financially a lot longer than you should have had to. Jake cleared his throat. We've been talking about our finances in general. Actually, with the wedding coming up and eventually starting a family of our own, we need to be more responsible with money. Madison's going to take over all her own expenses. And I'm going to pay off my student loans faster instead of just making the minimum payments. I looked at Madison with new respect. This wasn't just about our relationship. She was taking steps toward true adult independence. I think that's very mature of both of you, I said. Madison looked down at the letter still in her hand. I have some questions about Robert, about my biological father. Not today, but maybe sometime soon, when things are calmer. Whatever you want to know, we'll tell you, Sandra promised. No more secrets. Madison nodded gratefully, then turned back to me. Dad, can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you keep this letter all these years? Why not just throw it away? It was a good question. One I'd asked myself many times over the years. I kept it because I thought someday you might need to know the truth, I said slowly. Not to hurt you, but to help you understand where you came from and, more importantly, the choices that shaped your life. Robert chose to walk away. I chose to be your father. Your mother chose to protect you from a painful truth. We all make choices, Madison. And those choices define who we are more than our biology ever could. Madison nodded, tears streaming down her face again. She stood up and came to me, wrapping her arms around me in a hug I hadn't felt from her in years. I love you, Dad, she whispered. My real dad. I held my daughter close, feeling the weight of years of hurt and resentment lifting from my shoulders. I love you too, sweetheart, I said. I always have, and I always will. 3 months later, on a perfect October afternoon, I stood in the small anteroom of the Willow Creek Event Center, adjusting my tie for the 10th time. Through the door, I could hear the murmur of 100 conversations as friends and family gathered for Madison and Jake's wedding. The past 3 months had been transformative for our family. True to her word, Madison had taken over all her own expenses, from her phone bill to her car insurance. She'd worked with Sandra to plan a beautiful wedding that stayed within our original budget, and most importantly, she'd never again thrown it in my face that I wasn't her biological father. There had been difficult conversations, of course, Madison had wanted to know more about Robert Callahan, and Sandra and I had told her everything we knew. She'd been shocked to learn she had half-siblings, but had decided not to seek them out. At least not yet. They don't know about me, she'd reasoned. And their father Robert, he made his choice a long time ago. I don't want to disrupt their lives. Her maturity had impressed me. The entitled young woman who'd demanded an extra $15,000 for a wedding venue had grown into someone thoughtful and considerate, someone who recognized the impact her choices could have on others. A knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. Sandra peeked in, looking elegant in her mother-of-the-bride dress. "It's time," she said softly. "Madison's ready." I followed Sandra to another room where Madison waited in her wedding gown. The sight of her took my breath away. Not just because she was beautiful though, she was radiantly so, but because of the woman she'd become. "Dad," she said, her eyes brightening when she saw me. "What do you think?" "You look incredible," I said truthfully. "Jake's a lucky man." Madison smiled, then grew serious. "I want to tell you something before we go out there." "What is it, sweetheart?" She took my hands in hers. "When we started planning this wedding, I was so focused on having everything perfect, the perfect dress, the perfect venue, the perfect flowers, but I've realized that none of that matters compared to having the perfect person walk me down the aisle." I swallowed hard against the lump forming in my throat. "You are my father," Madison continued. "In every way that matters. And I am so proud and so grateful that you're the one giving me away today." I couldn't speak for a moment. Finally, I managed to say, "The honor is all mine, Madison." The ceremony was beautiful. When the minister asked, "Who gives this woman to be married?" I responded with a clear, strong voice, "Her mother and I do." Because that was the truth. Sandra and I had raised Madison together. We had loved her, supported her, guided her to adulthood. She was our daughter, regardless of biology. At the reception, during his toast, Jake surprised us all by addressing the journey our family had been on. "I want to thank James and Sandra for welcoming me into your family," he said, raising his glass, "and for showing me what true parenthood looks like. It's not about DNA, it's about love, sacrifice, and showing up every day for the people who depend on you." Madison squeezed my hand under the table. Across from us, Michael, who now knew the whole story, gave me a nod of respect and understanding. Later, as I danced with Madison, she whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me, Dad, even when I was at my worst." "That's what real parents do," I told her. "We don't give up, even when things get tough." As we moved across the dance floor, I caught glimpses of our extended family and friends watching us with smiles. My brother Tom, who'd flown in from Arizona for the wedding, gave me a thumbs up. Sandra's sister Julie, who'd been present at Madison's birth and had watched me step into the role of father all those years ago, wiped tears from her eyes. They all knew our story now, not just about Robert's letter, but about the journey Madison and I had taken together from the day I'd chosen to be her father to this moment, dancing at her wedding. After the reception, as Sandra and I drove home, she reached over and took my hand. "You know what I was thinking during the father-daughter dance?" she asked. "What's that?" "That Robert Callahan has no idea what he missed out on. 23 years of being Madison's father, 23 years of watching her grow up, of helping shape her into the amazing woman she's become. His loss," I said simply. "The biggest loss of his life," Sandra agreed, "and the greatest gift of yours." When we got home, I went to my office and opened the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet. The folder where I'd kept Robert's letter all these years was empty now. Madison had taken the letter, not as a weapon or a reminder of rejection, but as a symbol of the choice that had defined her life, Robert's choice to walk away and my choice to step up in its place. I put a new document, a letter Madison had given me just before the wedding ceremony. "Dear Dad, that's who you are, my dad. Not because we share DNA, but because you chose me, because you loved me when you didn't have to, because you stayed when it would have been easier to walk away. I'm sorry for the times I hurt you by saying you weren't my real father. I was wrong. So wrong. You are more my real father than Robert Callahan could ever have been. Because being a real parent isn't about biology. It's about love. It's about sacrifice. It's about showing up, day after day, year after year. Thank you for showing me what a father should be. Thank you for loving me even when I was unlovable. Thank you for never giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to. I love you, Dad, always and forever. Your daughter, Madison." I closed the drawer, knowing I would never again need to prove my place in Madison's life. I had earned the title of father through love, sacrifice, and unwavering commitment. And no DNA test or biology could ever take that away. In the end, the truth had set us all free. Madison was free from the fantasy of a heroic biological father who never existed. Sandra was free from the burden of a decades-old lie. And I was free from the pain of having my role as Madison's father constantly questioned and devalued. We had weathered the storm together and emerged stronger, closer, and more honest than ever before. And that was worth more than any wedding venue, more than any financial support, more than any illusion of perfection. That was family, real family. That night, I slept more peacefully than I had in years, secure in the knowledge that the daughter I had chosen, the daughter I had raised, the daughter I had loved unconditionally for 23 years, finally and truly understood what it meant to have a real father. And I was proud to be that father, not by birth, but by choice. The most important choice I had ever made. The end. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left.